What's up, everybody? We are back for another episode of Preacher's Corner. I, of course, am your host, Preacher. Everybody knows that. My bright, shining face. This is episode number 21. Woof. We are moving along, chugging along. And so I am glad to be here tonight. As you see, you might recognize someone below me. You've seen him before. The one, the only, Jeremy Bennett. Welcome back. Jeremy decided to say yes to coming back. Uh, he didn't say yes to the dress. He said yes to the best. Uh,
Love
but
it.
I'm glad to have Jeremy back. He's gonna, as everybody knows, my regular co-host is not here. Unfortunately, he's not going to be with us for a while. Hopefully, in like 7 years, he can be with us again. Uh, that's a different story for a different day. But until then, I am going to, not until 7 years from now, but in the meantime, I am looking for a co host. So I'm having different people on. That's why you saw Jamie the other night. That's why you see Jeremy today. And so I'm going to be like I said today, I'm going to be, well, I said today I was recording the next one. Like it's all weird when you record them and drop them. Uh, but the last interview you guys would have seen, I said I'm gonna be like Jeopardy when Alex Trebek passed away, and they
Oh,
just started trying to find hosts. Like we have a guest
right.
host today. Next week we have another guest host. So I'm gonna have guest hosts left and right. It's gonna be like Oprah. You get to be a guest host. You get to be a guest host. Uh, so today though, I am so happy to have my homegirl Kaylie. What's up, Kaylie?
Hey.
She's gonna be sharing her story. Her Jeremy and I know her from our the Facebook group that we're admins for. She is another admin on Recover Out Loud number 2, and so she's one of them that does the lives just like us. And it seems like everybody over there is wanting to jump on Preacher's Corner, and I am fine with that because I love talking and I love people jumping on Preacher's Corner. So Kaylee is the next check on the list. Uh, One day we'll have you guys will get to meet Benito Castillo. That'll be an interesting day.
Yes.
We can talk about how short he is and things like that, but don't tell him we said that unless he watches this back, and then he'll be like, "What?"
He's gonna watch
but
this.
and then he'll bring it up when he comes on, and it'll be a whole ordeal. But Kaylee, we are glad to have you on Preacher's Corner, and so we'll hear her story. We're gonna tie it around the topic of identity because all of us, when we are in our addiction and even pre-addiction, are searching for who is it that we are. And I think even now, a lot of us in recovery are still trying to formulate who is it that we are. And so I think it's a good topic to talk about, especially with someone telling their story. So, welcome, Kaylee. Uh, so the question that everybody waits to hear from every guest: what are three? Now you have a tall task because Jenna, when it was her time, like episodes ago, I think we weren't even in the double digits yet when Jenna did it. Like she said, she can burp on command.
Oh
So
yeah.
you have a tall task in in that because I mean, if you can't burp on command, is there really interesting facts that can be said? Uh,
Well, right then.
so, what are your three interesting facts, Miss Kaylee?
So, number one, I think would be the fact that I can be very in tune with people's emotions and feelings. I know when people are upset, and I tell what's wrong before they even really know what's wrong. Jeremy can attest to that because there'll be times that I have called him and it's been like a normal day, and I'm like, "What's wrong?" And he's like, "What do you mean?" I'm like, "Well, what's wrong?" Like, I anybody even said anything before Jeremy. So I'm pretty good at sniffing out feelings, I guess. I guess that's Um, Another interesting fact about me is that I'm adopted. I'm the oldest of third siblings. So, and then I'm also a middle child. So when I was adopted, I was a middle child. So I'm the oldest and the middle.
Interesting.
Nice.
Hence, interesting fact.
Yeah, absolutely.
If the fact makes you go, interesting, it's probably an interesting fact.
You don't see the oldest and the middle.
Right.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and then I then the other one is I'm from Florida. I'm naturally a blonde. I'm not naturally. I'm not a.
I believe it.
What?
I
Yeah,
believe it.
I have, but
A certain person on this recording asked me if I was a blonde today.
Oh, it was me. It was definitely me.
Well, I think she knows that because she knows it wasn't her.
we
No.
yeah, I'm not. I will. I have pictures to prove it, so I can.
Now, preacher, it all makes sense. Like she's natural blind. I get it now.
You said you have pictures to prove it, so you have
Yeah,
receipts. You have
I,
receipts.
Oh,
I do.
I
shucks.
had to. Sorry. No,
I absolutely do.
I had to. The opportunity. The ball was coming at me. I had to swing.
Hey, take go for it.
Right?
Uh, well, thank you for those interesting facts. Um, we are glad to, like, all jokes aside, we're glad to have you on Preacher's Corner. Uh, like I just I think I appreciate anybody who's willing to take their time out of their day and just talk about one of the worst times of their life. Like, because I think we can all agree that, like, no one goes through addiction like, yay, like, it was
Right.
my time in addiction. Um, and so looking at your addiction, like, because our addiction comes from somewhere. Like, we don't just wake up in the morning like, oh, I'm gonna use. It's a gradual process. And so, can you take us back to the beginning and what was life like before addiction took hold?
Well, I'm a mom of three, and I well, basically I'm a mom of three. I didn't start my addiction until I was in my late 20s. So
Okay.
life, I drank alcohol here and there, and it wasn't anything really. I wasn't. I was born a soccer mom. My kids played sports, and I worked in healthcare, and then kind of leading up to my in 2014, I was diagnosed with MS. So that kind of plays a part in my story.
Sorry. I
Good.
screwed my mom.
So,
Everybody, this is a new section we've hit. This is
eat with
Preacher's
preacher.
Corner, Preacher's cooking corner.
Yeah.
um, and so looking at, like, how would you say your life, like, leading up to it, like, what how did you deal with struggles, and how did like, what who was Kaylee before addiction really, like,
I
came about?
Okay, so I was a very outgoing person. I liked being with people. I was very I wasn't shy, I guess, but I did. And then after my addiction I became very shy. It took very hard to get out of my shell. Um and again, Jeremy, that's one Jeremy can attest to. I used to be really shy. I wouldn't I give my opinion, and now you can't get me to shut up.
Facts.
I was like that. I was a very outgoing person. I loved being around people, loved being out and about. I could go and do things on my own. I didn't have people, to go with me. And now I'm the complete opposite.
So you said bringing it back to what you said a while ago. So you said getting diagnosed with MS had a role in your addiction.
Yeah.
Well, starting your
Look
addiction.
at
Yeah.
That's exactly what I was gonna ask. Look at you. See, look at you, co-host.
Yeah, it did. Unfortunately, I was diagnosed in 2014, and I couldn't tell you what year it was this happened because I don't remember. I've done too many drugs. But however, in my addiction, I guess what really started my addiction was I had gotten an MRI, and let me back up a second. So I have something called JC virus. It's like the chickenpox virus or the shingles virus. Everybody has it, including this JC virus. Everybody has it, but like until you take a medication or something, it kind of like activates it, I guess. And there's no side effect to it. Like I don't notice it. If they hadn't tested me for it, I wouldn't know. I wouldn't have known that I had it.
Okay.
But in addition to that, there's something also that goes with that called PML, and it has to do with blood barriers in your brain. It's all very scientific and stuff I don't really understand, but it's also kind of horrifying. So I don't really didn't really delve too much into that when my doctor was telling me about it. But there's certain medications I can't take. There's certain things I can't put in my body because of that particular. If I did, it would cause the PML, and that's a very, very painful way to go. So long story short, I had gotten this MRI, and somehow they test the levels. I guess there's like levels of this JC virus, whatever, and they test it. And somehow it had gotten mixed up, and they thought, that I had been diagnosed with PML, that my levels were up higher, and that I was in danger. So basically, I freaked. And my boyfriend at the time, who I was not aware of, because I'd never heard of meth, I'd never heard of none of that stuff. I didn't know. Like I knew it was out there, but it wasn't something I had been exposed to when I was younger. I had a good upbringing. My family loved me very much, and my biological family is nothing. There's alcoholics and addictors in my biological. So, but I didn't grow up with any of that. I didn't know about it. I didn't know what drugs really were. That makes sense. Like I knew what they were, but I didn't have any experience with them, so I wouldn't have known what the signs were to look for somebody who was on drugs, I guess.
Right.
So my boyfriend at the time was on meth, and I got that bad news. I'm thinking to myself, well, damn, I only got 6 months to live. Let's
Wow.
live, And so he was like, well, here, try this. And so I tried it, and I loved it, man. 2 weeks, I was up 2 weeks straight the first time I ever did it. Just balls to the wall, just off to the races. There I went. Well, in that period of time, my doctor had called me and she said, there's been a mistake. You're fine. Your levels are okay. I don't know what happened. And I was like, oh, well, shit.
Wow, that's a big fuck up.
Yeah.
Right. Said you're gonna die.
You're
in
gonna
6
die.
months.
Oh, wait.
Oh, sorry.
We messed up.
Yeah. I don't know what happened, like how that went down. It was crazy. So like by that point though, it was too late. Off to the races, so to speak.
Wow.
Man.
Wow.
I can imagine that.
Because like you did it thinking like, well, I mean, I'm done.
Yeah.
And then you get addicted, and then they're like, oh yeah,
JK.
like about that.
JK.
Wow, that's like, are you serious?
Yeah.
You messed that up.
Yeah, I was
Wow.
I was addicted. I was so far. I was into my addiction, so I didn't care. I was like, oh, all right, cool. So let's just keep fucking. I was hooked at that, so I couldn't stop. Like I tried it for, I would try here and there, and then I'm just like, you know what, fuck it. I'm this far gone. What now?
Yeah.
Right.
So
Man.
I remember like when I started using, like I prior to me using, I had separated from my wife back in May of 2023, and so then I moved to my parents for a little bit, and then I'm like, I can't. They lived an hour away from where like I lived, and I still had to pick up my kids to bring them to school, and I was the student pastor still, so I was having to wake up at like 4:30 just so I could get to the house to pick them up, and then I wasn't getting home until 8 o'clock at night, and on Wednesdays we had youth group, and so I wasn't getting home until like we'd get done at 8:30, and I'd have to close everything up, and so I wasn't getting back to my parents until like 10:30, and so I decided to move back to where I lived when I was married, and um, but being alone was I couldn't do it. Like it was just not having my kids around me, not having my wife around me. It was just it I was with myself, and it goes to that identity. Like I didn't know who I was apart from being a student pastor. I didn't know who I was apart from being a dad or a husband. And so like when I was there by myself, I had to stay like I had to think and be with myself, and I couldn't do that. So I ended up starting to Uber so that I would always be driving around and always have people around me. And
Right.
I happened to get linked up with this one girl who was using, and so then I was like, "Ooh, this is my mission. Like I can save these people." And so I'm like, I was telling people at church, like, what if can you imagine it? What if I go into the trap and I save like the entire trap and I shut the traps down and like, can you imagine it? And they're like, Pastor Antoine, like, just be careful. I'm like, what do you mean? And they're like, you're going you like you just separated from your wife. You're not in a good position. Like, and I'm like, I'm good. And famous last words, right? And so
Always.
like that when I did that, like I was hanging out with them and everything, and I remember they would always tell me, they'd be like, yo, so one time I was going to drop off a pizza to the girl, and she had some dude bring it out because she was, of course, in the trap using. And so this dude brings it out, and he looks at me. And now before like I used to work at a homeless shelter, and I used to do messages there and things like that. And so this dude comes out and he looks at me. He's like, "I know you from somewhere," and I was like, "Oh man." He's like, "You're that preacher man. That preacher man from Open Door Mission. That's you." And I'm like, "Yeah, that's me." And so I give him the pizza and I leave, and I get a text from her. She's like, "Apparently you have a new nickname, Preacher." And I was like, "Okay, whatever." But then one day she was like, "Hey, you can come into the trap." And so I go up and I knock, and they're like, "Who?" And I'm like, "What do I say?" And I was like, "Preacher." And they're like, "Oh, come in, preacher." So that's how the name preacher was born. And so like I would hang out with them. I would buy like pay for hotel rooms, and we'd chill in the hotel room. But all the time they would look at me and they'd be like, "Preacher, don't pick up, don't use." They're like, "You give us hope to show us that there's another way to do it." And they're like, "Don't use." And they're like, "You don't want this life." I remember one guy who I started using from quite a bit, and he became one of my best friends. Like, and now he's in jail for a while. But but he told me one day, he was like, the girl had said like, "Yo, tell preacher why he shouldn't use." And he looked at me and with his straight face, he said, "You know what? I'm not going to tell you not to use." He said, "But if you're going to," he said, "you can give me your car keys, your house keys, your job, your family, everything." He said, "Because eventually that's everything you're going to lose." And I was like,
Absolutely.
"Okay, whatever you say." Like, and so one day I was sitting there and I was so broken. And this is leading into a question. It's a long opening to a question. Uh, I was sitting there and like they had been telling me, "Don't use, don't use, don't use." And this girl used to smoke her crack from a bong. And so she like the amounts that I started with were ridiculous. Like I would smoke out of a pipe by the end, and I'd get mad because I couldn't like feel anything. And so like she was sitting there, and it was a group as usual, and she set her bong down, and I think I had just had an argument with my wife. And so I was feeling so broken and so like um the feeling I felt at that moment, and I'm sitting there and looking at how happy everybody was, perceived happiness. And
Right.
so I picked up her bong and I lit it up and I used. And she's like, "What?" And she's like, "Well, if you're gonna do it, you might as well do it the right way." And so, like, this is the first time that I really felt anything. And so she had me hold my breath and everything, and I felt it. And so I remember like it was yesterday that first time I used. And I mean that's
Yeah.
why we kept going back,
Yep.
because we're always chasing that first high. And
Yep.
so that's a long way of asking, what do you remember about the first time you used?
Well,
That was a long introduction to a question.
It was.
I remember we were in like you said, we were smoking weed, and he was like, "Yeah."
You're breaking up a little.
Oh, sorry, I said.
No, you're good.
So we were in my parents' shed, and I'm smoking weed, and he crying, said crazy news, and he was like, "Well, I got stronger. Want to try it?" All right, why not? Let's go. And I tried it, and I remember I held it in my I held my breath because I'd just been smoking. He's like, "Don't do that. You're gonna die. Like, don't do that. Like, you gotta exhale." And I'm like, "Oh shit!" So I did that. I remember like feeling a really weird sensation in the back of my neck, like from like my shoulder blades in my neck, and then I just felt good. Like I just felt good.
Yeah.
Um, and then of course, meth does things to your body and you want certain things and those certain things happened. And it was like it was awesome. Like I'd never experienced things like that before. I'm like, wow, I want to do that again. I
Yeah.
want to do I did. And I mean, I'm not proud of it,
No.
but but I thought it was the greatest thing since sliced bread.
Yeah. And I really equate it to, like, because I tell people all the time because I did hold my breath, and that's what she told me. She's like, hold your breath as long as you can hold it. And so like the feeling like passed through my head, and the only thing I can, like, so I always hear voices, and not in the sense of like, oh, crazy voices. It's like, oh, I need to do this, I need to do that, I need to do this. So it's always like, what do I need to do? And my mind's always busy with the next thing. And so I've always been looking for like this peace. And the first time I really took a hit, like I remember getting the feeling that passed through my head, and I let out, and I guess she called it zeroing because no smoke came out when I exhaled. And like I remember telling everybody, saying to everybody, I'm like, do you hear that? And I had closed my eyes, and like everything went silent. Like I didn't hear the voices anymore. Everything was like, it was peace. And
Right.
so that's what I kept going back for, was that peace. And now I say like all I was doing was chasing this manufactured piece that was cooked up a day before.
Yeah,
Like,
Right.
and that's all it was this manufactured piece that I had to keep coming back to, which isn't really peace at all,
absolutely.
because like in
It's a
all
persona.
actuality it gives you chaos. And
Yeah,
so
Right.
it's um I love saying it, it's like the friend that stabs you in the back, but you keep coming back to him
absolutely.
because
Right.
you realize that's all you have at that moment.
But I have a second part to that answer because there's a second part to it. I just wanted to get that is
Okay. I like second parts.
well, you're not gonna like this part. So
No.
is in a situation where I should not have been in. As we all do when we're addicts, we kind of put ourselves in not so great situations, and I got
Absolutely.
beat up and sexually assaulted.
Mm.
Um, and I remember passing out, and I honestly feel like I was given some food, and then I don't really remember much after that. I remember the assault, I remember getting beat up, but I remember bits and pieces. You know what I'm saying? And I remember when I was waking up, I was being injected with meth. Somebody was hitting me with meth, and and that experience, like it took it to a whole nother level for me, like
Absolutely.
and And I remember thinking, when I first started doing it, I'm never going to shoot drugs. I'm never going to do that. I'm never going to be an IV user. Well, I was. And I could have said no. I could have, after that happened, because obviously I'm waking up to it. I didn't have a choice in that matter at first.
Yeah.
And that option wasn't given to me. But after that, because I loved that feeling that I got, it was easier for me to be like, yeah, let me do it that way. Let me do it that way. And then, I didn't know how to do it myself, so I'd have people do it, and eventually I figured it out. And when they tell you that you can't get high the same way after you get high that way, they aren't lying. You still get high, but not the way that does it for you.
Yeah.
Right.
But like I said, that just took me to a whole nother level. That just and I'm like, damn, I like this, even though I really was miserable.
Yeah.
Right.
But I numbed the pain. I forgot the initial reason why I started that in the first place, how I even got started with that in the first place, because the feeling was so good. I forgot that the events that led up to that happening.
Yeah.
So basically, you put on that mask so you didn't have to remember all that. So because
Absolutely.
yeah.
You feel do you feel that subconsciously almost you were really like running from that
Absolutely.
that moment? Like,
Absolutely. Absolutely. Once I figured out, hey, I don't have to remember shit,
yeah.
and this is the way to feel good, I went with it because it was good, and it was good
Yeah.
every time I was able to get it. Every time I was able to hit, it was good every time.
Cause
You know.
I just remember like when I was living on the street, like, cause I had people staying in my car, and then periodically, like, one of the girls who was living in my car, she'd be at an overnight lick, and so we'd have like someone else stay in the car, like, and so I had like the three main people, but then periodically, like, we'd have somebody who was using with us, and like, hey, get in, like, drive with us, and things like that. And I remember there was one time though, one of the girls who was living in the car, I remember like when she wasn't using, when it was that break in time where like you're sober and you're waiting to get more, and I remember like just the pain in her voice because someone brought up kids, and she like was talking about hers, and she'll never see her kids ever again. And when as soon as she started talking about it and I heard the pain in her voice, she's like, yo, we need to go get something. And so I was like, wow, like this thing that we're doing is so powerful that it makes us forget. And that's why we keep going back, because these moments that we've experienced are so painful that like
Mm-hmm.
we don't want to deal with them. And the only way, like, it's either deal with it and work through it, which then you feel more pain, or
Yep.
just numb it. And that's
Yep.
the simplest way to do
Nothing.
it. And so like I just hearing that is like each time you used was like, yes, it feels good, but yes, I get to not remember what happened.
Yep.
Right.
That
Yep.
that's crazy.
You ultimately create that monster that you didn't ever want. You
Absolutely.
know,
I
and then
did.
and it leads to path to destruction. Right. I mean, like in a time being, you didn't feel like you were destroying anybody or yourself. But
Mm-mm.
like, coming out of addiction is looking back at all the times and seeing that destruction and
Mm,
terror you put on people.
I remember sitting with my mom. I had come to see the kids. I was sitting with my mom in the yard. She just hugged me and cried, and I
mm,
was so uncomfortable. I was like, I gotta go. I gotta go get high. I can't deal with this. I'm making my mom cry. What the
mm.
fuck? Oh, sorry. Excuse my language.
No, you're good. You're good.
But yeah.
Remember, Jamie was on here.
Okay. But I do. I remember making my mom cry, and because she was like, didn't know if I was alive, didn't know if I was dead, like.
Mm,
And I remember one time there was the police had called my phone because my mom hadn't heard from me in like 3 weeks. So I I had my friend call her because I had gotten myself out of yet another messed up situation, and ended up at his house. And the funny thing is, I never met this person in person. I only ever talked to them on the internet. But I called a friend of mine, and she was like, "Well, call him. You'll be safe. Like, he'll come get you. Like, all that." And he did. And I was, and he called my mom for me and let her know. And then, like, I don't know, a couple days later, I was able to get my phone. Like, I was able to charge my phone or whatever. And there was a message from the Kent Police Department looking for me to do a wellness check.
Wow. Wow.
So was that?
I go ahead.
So that guy that your friend told you to text or call was he like a safe haven, like for people like their addiction
No,
or?
but for me, it was. And he was,
Okay.
listen, but it turned out he was, everybody used to tell me I was his favorite dopo, even though I wasn't a dopo. You know what I'm saying? But because he never treated me like one. And I never acted like one. You know, I never did anything for dope. I never did, but I was always dating the dope man, so I didn't have to. So I guess in a way I was, but I really wasn't, if that makes any
Right.
sense.
It does.
But like,
That's crazy.
he protected me from a lot of things and gave me a place to stay and made sure I would eat, and also, but he also kept me high. And so I just put up with all his bullshit. You know what I'm saying? Like, then that's what we do.
Right.
There was like and the fact, like, and I hear like these stories from like females that were in addiction, and I'm like, I saw it firsthand because I had two females living in the car with me. And so like there one of them had a guy just like that, and he'd like call and be like, hey, do you need anything? And we'd be like, yeah, get money from him. And so he'd send money because he knew she needed to eat, and we would take that and use it for money to get high. And then he'd be like, oh, like he would bring her to New York City and give her clothes, and then she would come back and sell them to get high. And like it was just, I think back on that, and then like what you were saying about your mom when you saw your kids, and you were like, as soon as you felt that emotion like stirring, you're like, I gotta go, I gotta go. I remember one time the girl that um I started to use because of. Um, I said when I first, like I said, I was like, oh, I need to save these people. And so like prior to me starting to use, I was trying to get her back involved with her kids. And I remember one time we got her grandma to agree to bring the kids to see her um after they went bowling, and so they met us at Golden Corral. And I remember we were sitting there, and she had to get up like periodically and go out to my car so she could use because. And then she texted me. She's like, "Yo, just leave. We've got to go." And so I get in the car. I told her grandma and the kids bye and everything, and I get in the car and I'm like, "What's going on?" She's like, "I can't do this. I can't do this." She's like, "Cause I." And the thing that stuck with me was what she said. She said, I can't take seeing my kids cry when I have to leave. She said, so I'm
Wow.
not even going to say bye to them. And
Yeah.
and then she ended up getting like $200 that night and spending it all to just forget about like everything. And so like it's just it's crazy how we use it, and like Jeremy said, it just like it creates more of the chaos. Like
Right.
we're trying to get away from it, but it just creates more, and then we use it to stay away from the chaos that it created. It's like a
Right.
vicious cycle.
Absolutely. You know
uh
it.
no,
Good.
keep going. You go.
But what's crazy is we don't know that chaos because we think we're getting it better. Because we're numbing that pain, right? And like
Absolutely.
for me, I started out with pills, and that first high, dude, I'm telling you, it was great. Like you said, that first high I won't ever get that again. But you're chasing it. That's what I ultimately led to. Like that wouldn't get me high enough. I went to cocaine. Like, but ultimately it turned into the worst person ever. I was, I was running dope for the supplier.
Mm.
I was, basically getting this to harm innocent people that wasn't even in the game yet, but they were going to try it because he was a main dealer out there where I lived. And like,
You know, and the other
like,
thing, everybody they chase the high, chase this high. I didn't have to, because I have I'm sensitive to like side effects for everything. Like when I take medication, my doctors don't tell me what the side effects are to see if I can, because I tell them don't tell me, and I don't research it because, and then if I experience something that I'm like that's a little weird, I ask them about it and they're like yeah that's something. So when I would get high, I would get, and especially when I would shoot it, like I'd get that same high every time, so I didn't have to chase that high. I could get it,
Wow.
and it was
Which again kept you going back.
yeah, absolutely. I didn't have to. Eventually, it got to the point where I get it because it fucked my veins up so bad, and whatever. And then smoking it and doing it all the other ways was like, but it didn't do that. It towards the end, I guess I would say I chased it more than anything.
Yeah.
I'd sit for hours trying to hit, hours trying to do it, and then I get so frustrated and so mad.
That's how I remember one, like, cause I never shot up, but I remember one girl. She just kept sitting there frustrated because she kept like putting it in and not finding it and getting mad, and she's and then she's like fuck this and left, and I was like, what just happened?
I remember when
And
I threw the rig across the fucking room and then had to go back and find it because I wanted it.
the crazy things we do.
Yeah, I
But
remember.
I do remember like I said, I started smoking from a bong, so the amounts that I did compared to how much you can put in a little pipe, like I not only was I not feeling anything, but then like towards the end I couldn't breathe each time. I couldn't breathe, but then my chest would hurt whenever I would take a hit, and so like I'm like not only am I not feeling anything, but now my chest is hurting when I take a hit. Like, so I'm gonna die and I'm not even gonna feel anything. And so that was like the big like you're done. You just need to be done. Like,
Right.
I remember you talking about using bong, whatever. And I obviously mixed it with meth. You don't do that, first of all. Don't ever do that. Don't ever mix those two because, oh my God, I thought I was hallucinating. I could see colors, I could see sounds. Like I was fried. Okay. And then there was this guy that we had a love hate relationship. I hated the motherfucker, but I tolerated him because he was in all the circles. You know what I'm saying? Well, I'd gotten so messed up, and it's actually right after I got out of jail. So the first time when I initially first ever got arrested. And I remember getting out, and they're like, "You want to hit this?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure, why not?" They're like, "Here, hit it from a bong." Boy, that was a mistake. I had convinced myself that this man had murdered my daughter, and I was blowing up my mom's phone trying to get her to let me talk to her. She's like, she's watching a movie. I was like, I just need to hear her voice. Like I was crazy. I was literally like going insane. So I, it was, it was nuts.
wow. So looking at all of that and looking at your addiction and your time before, and like because like I said, I think pre-addiction, because I could say pre-addiction I knew who I was, but I really didn't know who I was, and that even became more apparent when I was in my addiction, that I didn't know who the hell I was. And then when I came into recovery, then it's like, oh my goodness, I definitely didn't know who I was because everything had just been stripped away. And so how would you say that addiction began to really uh, shape your identity, or how you even saw yourself and the world around you, like your worldview?
I would say probably after I was sexually assaulted, that definitely started to change my view on things. Um, and then like I said, I kept putting myself in these dumbass situations. And then I would wonder, what the fuck am I doing? What is wrong with me? Like, why does this stuff keep happening to me? I'm a good person. And the thing is, you get into it. Usually when people, not usually, a lot of people when they get into addiction, they, they fuck people over. They don't care. They don't care about other people. But I did. You know what I'm saying? I was always kind. If I had something and somebody else didn't, I'd share. Like, and I know that doesn't necessarily make me a good person because it was drugs. But my point is, like, I was always kind to other people. Even when people were being shitty to me, I was always kind. And then that
Absolutely.
started to like fade because I eventually got sick of like being the pushover. You know what I mean? Like, because I had grown so into myself, like shrunk into myself so much that like I didn't know what who I was. You know what I'm saying? And I think in my recovery, I'm starting to get back the person that I was before I was in my active addiction. You know, I'm doing the mom thing again. I'm a wife. I'm a daughter. I'm a sister. Like I'm starting to really realize that those things were important and to not ever let go of that again because I
Yeah.
mean, you know what I'm saying? I've got friends even though they're not like in the same town that I live in. I have friends, I have family outside of my or like my blood family that I can rely on. And so I guess the answer to the question is I still don't really know who I am in my recovery. I'm getting there, but I couldn't tell you for sure, you know, who is Kaylie because I don't
Yeah.
know.
No, that's and I totally understand that because I feel the same way. Like I'm still trying to figure out like who is preacher? Is preacher a preacher or is preacher Antoine or is preacher a mix of Antoine and preacher? Like it's like and that's why I think I love having like this nickname like because I really look at it as an identity. Like a
Same.
lot of times people are like Antoine and I'm like "Hmm, Antoine oh that's me. Uh
Yeah. You know,
but
for long, Ice Queen. I was the Ice Princess.
the Ice Princess.
It wasn't just because I had dope on me either.
I was thinking it's because you were cold.
Yeah, and that's what it turned into. I turned into a very cold and distant, um, especially when I overdosed. And I might cry because I'm not quite. I'm trying not to, but I might cry after
Hey,
he
I've cried many times on Preacher's Corner.
died. After he died, I did not talk to anybody for a month. I kept to myself. I didn't eat. I just got high. I for like I don't say because I was clean right when he died, and then for like a day or something like I got so high, and then I was like, what the hell am I doing? And then I just shut down completely. I didn't talk to anybody. I didn't eat. I didn't cry. I was like a shell of a person. Like you everybody tell me there's no life in your eyes. Like there
Mm,
was and then it didn't help when people were like, "Oh, you were his favorite person." Man, shut the fuck
mm.
up. I don't hear
Yeah,
that. I know I was his favorite person. And he was my favorite person. And the whole like other than my kids, but I didn't want to hear that. I didn't want to hear that. But people kept telling me that and it like shoved me further and further down into that hole where it was like I wasn't sure if I was ever going to get out of it.
yeah.
I wanted to die. I my any thought of living anything was cuz I had to be the one to tell his mom what happened.
Mm,
Um of course the police told her, but then, for me to go and actually tell her what actually happened was one of the hardest things I ever had to do. And it broke me. That situation broke me to the point where I was like I said, I didn't talk, I didn't eat, I didn't cry, I didn't sleep. I just was there. Have you ever seen that scene in Twilight where Bella, after Edward leaves Bella, and the seasons are just going by and she's just staring out the window? That was me.
no,
People
I
watch
did.
Twilight.
Yeah, I haven't watched Twilight.
All right, well, it's in. I'm there, and that was me. And she's staring out the window, and the seasons are just going by, and she's just sitting there.
No, I can get an idea of it because it's I've seen stuff like that in other movies where they're sitting and everything just is flying by. Everybody's moving around, and you're just like there.
Yeah, complete shell. And then one day, my now husband he was like, "You got to snap out of it." He's like, "I
Mm,
get it. I've lost somebody too, and I understand, especially somebody that close to you." He's like, "But you have to snap out of it." And I gradually started to take care of myself again, and then realize that I'm done with all this. I'm done with
yeah,
the life. I don't live in this trap house anymore. I need to get the fuck out of here. What am I doing?
yeah,
And that my senses started coming back, and my practicality and my like, oh girl, what are you doing kind of thing.
Yeah.
So
Would you say that's the moment that you realized that things were like spiraling out of control and that life was out of control?
nope, no.
When
That
do you think that moment happened?
moment was when I was living in a trap house, sober, living in a trap house. Okay,
Mm.
sober, trap house. And my dog got poisoned. My puppy got poisoned. I was blamed for it, even though everybody in the house knew who really had done it. There was a prostitute on our front porch or our living room couch sucking dick every time you walked out the room. There was you go out there and you go, whoa, what is happening? And then my friend got bit by her dog's boyfriend. I mean,
Mm.
boyfriend dog, which was weird. And because it was bad. It looked like a shark. The doctor thought it was like a shark bite. Is what happened to her. It was so bad.
Really?
It was bad. It was awful. And he slowly started to go. He had a lot, a lot, and he wasn't all there. You know what I mean? But he was also supposedly a veteran, which I don't generally question those kinds of things. But when you can't tell me, first of all, when you don't act at all like you have any kind of discipline, or there was just holes in his story, I guess is what I'm saying.
I can attest to that because I even in addiction I could tell who was a veteran and who wasn't.
Yeah.
Because we still had like a level of like military bearing and like things like that. Like it's like, oh, that's a veteran.
None of that here. So I guess what really opened my eyes to wanting to get completely out of the game and completely just away from all the crazy bullshit was he tried to kill me. He would throw things at the door that I was in. Like my dog got out of the room one time and I went to go get him back and he stepped up to me like, and he was a kind of big dude, you know what I'm saying? And I was maybe 90 pounds at that point. Okay. And he was a big dude. And he tried to, and my dog was going after him because he was the one that poisoned my puppy. And obviously, I was able to get my puppy back to, um, it didn't kill him, but it very well could have. And
Yeah.
and my dog loved everybody. So for him to go after him, growling and snarling, I was like, yeah, motherfucker, I know what you did. He knows what you did. Don't come at me. Well, he looked at me and he like stepped at me like he was gonna hit me, and I'm like, motherfucker, I wish you would. Something snapped in his eyes. I was just like, oh shit. And and Jeff had to pick me up over his shoulder, had to pick Harley up over his shoulder and put us in the room and lock us in the room because I was going. I didn't care at that point. I was like, let's go. You want to go? Let's go. And then the next day he kept slamming stuff at the door, throwing stuff at the door. I'm gonna kill you, bitch. And I'm like, and I really believed that he was gonna try. So I jumped out the window and took off. And Jeff packed our stuff, got the dog, and we met at the library up the road from where we were staying. And my mom sent me money for an Uber, and we went and stayed with him. And then that's really when I decided enough was enough.
That's and I totally understand that. Like, because I know there was a time period like mine was only a couple days, but there was that time where in between like stopping using and then actually getting out of said situation. Like so I have like April 13th is the day I stopped using. But then April 16th is the day I was like, yo, I'm done. Like and so I almost look at both dates as monumental in my recovery because one is when I said fuck this, I'm not using anymore, and one said like I'm done living in this.
Absolutely. And and people tell me that I had to start my clean date, and I said, well, that's everybody's perspective. I get that. But I talked with my counselor, I talked with my sponsor that I had at the time, and she said, and then when I was in NeoCap, we learned about a lapse. A lapse doesn't mean you have to restart your time, whatever, blah blah blah. This is just the way I believe. They
No,
told
and
me,
if you didn't use, why do you have to restart?
well, I did. I did.
Oh.
Right after my friend died. And I'm not making excuses, but
No, not at all.
but that's just the way that I was taught, so that's just the way that I go by. So my clean date is 7/31/21.
7/31/21.
Mhm.
July 31st.
Mhm. And I did, I guess using after that, everybody says that I get like mixed opinions. You have to restart it. You don't have to restart it. I didn't because it was like I said, it was a lapse. I didn't go
Yeah.
full blown back out into my addiction.
Yeah.
I just had a moment.
Because relapse is more like you went back into
Yeah,
like,
I
yeah.
could have. I very well could have, but I didn't. I caught
Yeah.
my. So that is my clean date.
So it's basically like one last hurrah, is how I see it.
You could say that, but like I said, I didn't fully go back out. You know what I'm saying? Everybody's like, "Well, you still use," but yeah, but that's not what I'm focusing on here. You know, I wasn't in my right mind, so I honestly that's kind of what I go with. I wasn't in my right mind. I was so devastated with grief, and I know again that's not an excuse to go out and be like, "Oh, I'm gonna go get high. I'm gonna go do this." But like I said, my sponsor and everybody that I had talked to at the time, they're like, "No, you don't have to restart. You're fine. You keep it. You're on the right track. You didn't go back out. You had a
Yeah.
lot." So, I mean, and I know people will disagree with me on that, but uh,
No,
But
I definitely feel that.
like we see people disagree, Kaylee. But this is your story; it's not theirs. So
Absolutely.
they don't have to agree. But at the end of the day, this is your story. This is your life. So
Absolutely.
the heck what they say.
that's people that I care about the most agree with mostly in agreement with me. You know what I'm saying? Nobody has told me otherwise.
Yeah.
Nobody told me otherwise. And even if they did, I'd be like, well, I don't know what to tell you.
She'd be like, fuck off.
But
Stupid ass witch, I ain't with you.
I facts. So yeah, that's
um, so were there ever any moments like because you say you had that one moment where you stopped and then what happened with your friend and then you used again, was there any other moments where you tried, like I know for me, I there was a time where I was like, yo, you know what, I'm done, I'm done during the week, and on the weekend that's when I'm gonna smoke.
yeah.
And that probably lasted like 2 weeks, and then I was like, "Yeah, I can't do this."
At
So,
one
was there any times where you tried to stop on
yeah,
your own?
my biological dad. I moved down to Florida with my biological dad because he was like, "Girl, he's like, you need to come down here. I'm gonna get you together." And that didn't happen because I ended up getting high with my mom like the second day I was there. And I was honest with him about it. I told him about what happened, and he was like, "All right, well, if you do it again, you're gone." He's like, "You don't need to be seeing your mom because that's not what you need." And I had 4 months where I was sober, and then I went back to Akron, Ohio, and bam, gone
Yeah,
off. But yeah, I tried to get sober a few times, and this is the longest I've been sober. I'll have 4 years on the 31st of July.
and that started when you guys left that house.
No, no, this I was at that house after my friend died. So he died in
Okay,
20.
so it started before your friend died, and up until now.
Yeah, I had that lapse, and then
Yeah,
and then the thing is, I was at that house, but I was sober. Everybody around me was
yeah,
using. You know what I'm saying? I was
which is
trying.
probably hard as fuck.
It was. It was very hard because I wanted it so bad, but I'm like, but I was allowed to see my kids. My mom was picking me up. I was seeing my kids. I was
Yeah,
starting to do all the right things. And then I finally told my mom, like, Mom, I can't do this anymore. There ain't no hot water. There's a prostitute sucking dick on my fucking couch. I need to get the fuck out. Like, what am I
you
doing?
you realized what I realized, like
Yeah.
you were a sober person living in an addiction lifestyle.
Yeah.
Like not necessarily living a lifestyle, but like living like you weren't living a lifestyle, but you were sleeping in that. And so like that's when I even was like, I'm not doing this. Uh what? I don't belong here.
It probably took me. It took me. Yeah, because Yeah, and I had a warrant out for my arrest. So yeah, I went to jail right after my mom's birthday in 2023. I had a warrant out. I'd been running for a minute, a hot minute. And so we went to Geneva on the Lake to celebrate my mom's and my birthday. And then that Monday, I went and turned myself in. And because I'd been clean and stuff and done everything pretty much the judge had asked me to do, she just let me continue on probation. So I was able to get out 2 weeks after I went in, but I took care of that. I started taking care of the things that I needed to take care of.
Where'd you go?
Went to jail.
No,
Oh no,
where'd you go with your mom?
Geneva on the Lake,
Where at?
Ohio.
Oh, never mind.
Why?
There's more than one Geneva.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
was like, she came to New York
No, nope. I was in Ohio.
because we have a Geneva on the lake too.
Yeah, I really enjoy it. It's a lot of fun.
I don't like my Geneva.
Well, you come to Ohio and go to Geneva. It's
No,
awesome.
I like my Geneva. Our Geneva has. Have you guys ever heard of Gym Class Heroes?
Yes.
Travie McCoy. Have you heard of Travie McCoy, Jeremy? He dated Carrie Perry. Take a look at my girlfriend. She's the only
Okay,
one
yeah,
I got.
yeah, 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 yeah,
And
yeah,
then I want to be a billionaire.
yeah.
So
Okay, yeah, yeah.
that's him. He's from Geneva. He just got inducted into the Rochester Music Hall of Fame yesterday.
Nice. That's awesome.
Uh, but so looking past your time in addiction, because so you stopped using, uh, your friend passed away, then you guys made the decision to leave, and so now you're in this recovery journey. Um, like how did you begin to redefine yourself outside of this label as an addict? Like, because a lot of people will look at us even in recovery and still call us addicts, but
Yeah.
but really we're not. Like, and so what was that point where you were like, you know what, I'm redefining this term, and how did you begin to redefine that?
Well, my son had told me when I asked my mom if I could come live here with my boyfriend, then boyfriend, now husband, and my dog. She was like, "You have to ask the kids." And I was like, "All right." And my son's dad, while I had been incarcerated at some point in time, had committed suicide. He unalived
Mm.
himself. And my son looked at me and he said, "Mom, I can't be mad at you anymore, but I don't want to lose another parent." He's like, "You need to turn your life around." And
Whew,
at that point,
man, you're making me tear up.
I was like, "Damn." So I did it. I I came to live with my mom and I turned myself into my warrant, got all that taken care of, and came here make me cry. um,
It's those kids.
it was the kids. It really was my kids.
Kids do it all the time.
But the way he looked at me as a preacher, honestly, before that, I had a really shitty relationship with my son. And I had a really good relationship with my middle daughter, and I don't really get to talk to my youngest daughter, but that's another story for another day. Um, but he just, he would say he was okay with me, but then he'd be any little trigger would make him angry, and we would fight, and it would be all bad. You know what I'm saying? But then for him to look at me and be like, "Mom, I don't want to lose you too. I already lost my dad," and him having tears in his eyes, I'm like, "That's it. I have to get it together
Yeah,
because I'm the only."
yeah. Wow. Sheesh. Thanks a lot, Kaylee.
It's just that dust,
Man,
bro. It's okay.
that
I'm
that
not.
just makes me think like back to like I remember one day because I would always like message my youngest on Xbox, and one day um, he reached out to me. Well, I reached out to him, and I read the text and the message, and he was like, "If you want to be in my life," because I think I asked him if he wanted to go get lunch or something, and he's like, "If you want to be in my life, you'll change basically." And I was like, and that's when my brain started moving.
Yeah,
Like, and those kids, kids know how to get us.
they do, and my daughter will get me every once in a while. She'll be like, "You remember when you abandoned me?" Oh, girls, don't go there. I love you. Don't go there. And especially when she's angry, she's like, "No, we fucking
Yeah.
liked you. Not doing." I'm like, and I look at her and I'm
Wow.
like, "You really mean that?" And she'd be like, "No, I'm sorry." but and but she was hit the hardest, I think, by my addiction, honestly.
Yeah.
Before all my son and I, we got along, but we didn't get along. He was basically, my parents raised him, okay. But my middle girl, man, that was my road dog. We went everywhere together. We did everything together. We were inseparable. And then when I started my act addiction, she, and when I would have visits with her, like, she was the one that would scream and cry and hold on to my leg, and
Mm.
I'd be bawling, trying to, like, I'm sorry, baby, I can't take you with me, I can't, and it would break my heart every time. But then I'd have to go get high to forget about it. You know what I mean? But
And
but that's been restored. It took a
see,
minute.
and that's what people don't understand. I think people on the outside of addiction don't understand, like, because I've had people ask, like, how can you keep going back to something you know is destroying you? And I think it's moments like that
Yeah,
where like you can't, you physically can't be with your kids right then. And
yeah,
so it's like it's either me sit and think about the fact that I can't be with my kids, or I'm going to forget about it.
yeah.
And that's the only way that I can survive without my kids, is to just like let it not be a memory.
Absolutely, I agree with that 100%. And it was, and those parents who did lose custody of their kids and do all that, and able to get all them back, I commend you guys for that. That's not an easy thing to do, because the work is hard, but
Hmm.
when you're willing to do it, it's worth it. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Absolutely.
I was willing to do the work, and I'm getting to do so many more things with my kids now than I ever thought possible.
That's awesome.
Like, my mom is trusting me to help make decisions as far as, like, their mental health goes, and school, and, like, she asks my opinion now. She didn't used to do that ever.
That's awesome.
You
See,
know?
that goes into, I always say it, like, I hear it just as working as a peer advocate. Like, we have these things called supervisions as peers. And one
Mm-hmm.
of one of our supervisors, he says all the time, he's like, because every peer has been an addiction. And so he's like, he always asks about self care, because that's important. Since we're working with people in recovery, we need to focus on our self care
Yeah.
even more so. And so they're always saying all the time, like, make sure you're building a life that you don't want to be absent from. And,
Yep.
and they're all the time, all the time. That's the one thing. Whenever my supervisor sees us, like, I'll probably see him tomorrow when I go to work, and I guarantee he'll be like, "What did you do this weekend to take care of yourself?" And he's always asking. Or if he sees us before the weekend, he'll be like, "What are you doing this weekend to take care of yourself?" And so, like,
Yeah.
they're always pushing, like, self care, build this life that you don't want to be absent from, and it's things like that where you can look and be like, "Yo, they're including me in things,"
Yeah.
and it's stuff that you don't want to let go of and get rid of.
Like,
Um,
to $5 lacrosse game. I could have never done that in my active addiction. I could have never done that
yeah,
when I was else. But I got to. She wanted me there, and I went. And man, that little girl's
that's
fierce.
awesome.
I tell you what, don't mess with her on the lacrosse field. She tough,
Hit somebody with the stick. Wapa!
man. You think that the boys are aggressive in lacrosse? No, it's the girls, because they're not allowed to hit and do all that stuff. So they do other sneaky shit.
uh, Lacrosse is big in Ohio.
Yeah, it is. It is at our school for
It's
sure.
big here in New York.
I'm
Uh,
in the game to save my life, but I cheer her.
I remember I tried playing lacrosse in high school. I couldn't get down the. You always have to be
Yeah,
moving the stick and everything. I'm like, yeah, I'm done. I'm done.
but she
Like,
good.
you have to run and twist it and throw it and catch it. Like,
She's
forget that.
good, and she's really good at soccer, and she's fast, and that really helps
That
too.
helps a lot. Yeah. Um. So looking at the early days of recovery. Well, I would assume the hardest part about those early days was living at the house with people who were using.
I heard that was
What's
difficult.
that?
It was difficult for sure. It was one of the hardest. It was hard because everybody around me was high as shit, and I'm over here like da 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 da.
Yeah.
you know,
Um. Looking at mental health, like, and then I want to look at identity real quick before we close it out. But, like, looking at mental health, how did your understanding of mental health change during your recovery? Because, like you said, you saw people unaliving themselves and people dying and things like that. And so, like, I think we don't really think about mental health while we're in addiction, but when we come out, we definitely are confronted with mental health issues. And so, how did your understanding on mental health change during this whole recovery?
I learned that I had to take care of myself and I had to take care of my mental health because if I wasn't, then I could very much go back out. If
Mm,
I that good mental health space, you know what I'm saying? If I
yeah,
didn't have a solid mind about me, I could easily go back out. And so, I've made sure to make sure that I take care of myself. Um,
yeah,
I reach out when I need to reach out. And sometimes I don't. And then the other thing I do is I isolate. When I have to like really think about something, I will isolate myself and I won't talk to anybody. And I know that's not necessarily healthy, but for me it works.
yeah,
Like sort through things. And then when I need to talk about it, I go to somebody that I know that even if I have to repeat it 100 times, they'll talk about it with me.
yeah.
So I figure out what it is I'm trying to figure out.
Would you say those are tools or practices that you use in order to help manage things like anxiety, depression, trauma, things like that now?
Absolutely. And and one person who's really, really good about that with me is Jamie. She is really good about, she knows when I'm struggling. And so she'll be like, all right, what's going on? And I can talk to her and she'll be like, all right, let's dig deeper. Or what's really bothering you? And she kind of can help me get to the bottom of things while also understanding that sometimes in my MS, I don't always make sense. Like I can go
Yeah,
to her, and my husband's really good at that also. I will, speaking of my husband, but he can decipher, if sometimes I'll say something and like I'll miss half a sentence, you know what I'm saying? And he'll
mm-hmm.
be like, has to think about it for a second, and then he'll be like, oh, did you mean this? And I'm like, oh yeah, that's what I meant.
Mm.
And so for him being able, and Jamie and other people on the team are getting used to that, and they're learning how to decipher me. It's a process, but you'll get there. But
There's
both
hope.
of them are, I value them, and it's not that I value anybody less. So don't hear what I'm not saying, but I value them. The what some how what am I trying to say?
Jeremy's down there like, yeah, what are you trying to say?
I don't know what I'm trying to say. I'm just thinking I can't.
Jeremy's like, I'm waiting, finish it.
Jeff says I value everybody the same. I do value everybody the same, but those two particular people I've been close with for a really long time, and they've known me the longest, and so they know how to deal with me. I guess is what I'm.
Yeah. No,
So
I totally understand what you're saying. There's people who, like, we don't necessarily not value people, but there's people who have had bigger impacts because they've been in our lives longer.
yes, and they understand when I'm struggling the most. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
When I'm going through, one of the two, it's almost guaranteed that one of the two of them know and can explain it to me, if that makes sense. I guess.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. What role, just in looking at, like, the mental health aspect of recovery, what role would you say that um therapy, support groups, even like the recovery community, like things like ROL and things like that. How has that played into, like, the healing process from
Our
things?
Rockstar, which is my group, and really those are two groups. I do visit other groups, but not as much as I'm in ROL or I'm in Rockstars. You know what I'm saying? That's my group. Those are my groups. And those and the people, and I guess it's really the team of ROL that has been what has been the biggest impact on me, because we really stand on family value, like, and we're such a close knit group of people, even though some of us have never met each other. Like, we're close. Like Jeremy and I are getting closer because we're talking more, because we're being able to reach out more to each other, and like, and
Oh my goodness!
the iPhone could do that.
Oh my goodness! I'm gonna start doing that now at the end.
But it's relationships that I formed with this group of people, with this team that I have in ROL, is really, really what helps me, especially on my bad days. Oh my God! Look what you got.
So usually, like when you're in live in ROL, if you do this right here, it'll start doing fireworks too.
Man, man. Oh, there it goes. There it goes.
Fireworks. So hold on. I gotta see if I can do it. Let me prop my phone up here. Hold on a second. Take this off real quick. Let me see if I can do it.
No, no,
Hold on.
it's not working. That one will work.
Yeah.
Oh, I found something. Thanks, Jeremy.
I don't know why it won't do it, but that generally it does work that way. That's how you get the
That's
or
crazy.
this one.
So we've looked at the past. We've looked at like prior to addiction. We've looked at while you were in addiction, what made you come out of addiction and start recovery.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm a firm believer on if we've taken nothing from our past, uh, and we haven't applied the things that we've learned to who we are today, then like what was the point of going through it? And so looking at today, like who you are today, who are you today compared to who you were back in your addiction?
Who am I today? Well, I'm a wife. I'm a mom. I'm working to be a peer recovery person. Um, I'm more motivated than I was back before I started using drugs. You know what I'm saying? I have a purpose to my life now, I feel like, because I went through that addiction and I went through all that heartache and I went through all that bullshit. Now I realize, I have a greater purpose with my life and things that I
Absolutely.
want to do.
Absolutely. I love that. Um and I think so there's parts of like addiction sucks. I think we can all agree about that.
Absolutely.
Addiction sucks. But I know there's a lot of things that I dealt with that made me into a stronger individual because of it when I was in my addiction. And so there's parts of like my past pre-addiction, there's parts of even when I was in my addiction that I think I'll always carry with me. And I think that's part of like I always say like wisdom is knowledge applied to your life. And so I think there's always going to be things that I took from my addiction, lessons, reminders, like fuel for the fire. And
Yeah.
so what parts of your past, whether that was pre-addiction, whether that was in your addiction, what parts of your past do you carry with you now today as a lesson, reminder, even that fuel to
Just being
keep going?
I think is really the biggest thing that I've taken from all of that, because you don't know where they're at in their life. You don't know that sometimes when you smile at a person, that can just make their whole day because they're having such a shitty day.
Mm,
And I try to be kind to everybody. I'm really not a mean person. I know I have that RBF, but I can't help it. I try.
I
But
try so hard.
exactly. It's that kind. Always have to be kind to people no matter what.
Absolutely. I love that. Um how so you just like me, just like a lot of us, we haven't really figured out fully who we are. I love the saying like I don't know uh I'm not where I want to be, but I'm not where I used to be.
Yeah.
And so like I haven't fully figured out who is Antoine. I haven't fully figured out who is Preacher. But how would you say that recovery has helped you um discover I'll say not really your identity, since we're still trying to figure out our identity, but really your purpose, because from what you said, you're in the process of becoming a peer. And
Yeah.
so I know when I heard about that there's a position called a peer advocate where I can take what I've been through and I can use that to help other people, I was like, yo, that's what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah.
And so how would you say recovery has helped you in discovering what this ultimate purpose for your life has been?
Um, I guess I've always enjoyed helping people. I've always, for the most part, enjoyed being around people. And I know what it is to struggle. We all, as addicts, we know what it is to struggle. We know what it is to see people broken and destroyed. And honestly, like, that isn't who I am anymore. I'm not that broken, destroyed person
Hmm.
who destroyed her life and just and devastated her parents. You know what I mean? I'm to the point where, like, I know what I want to do with my life, and I know that I want to help other people not
Hmm.
feel that way anymore, not feel broken, not feel incomplete, and not have that sadness that they have when they're in their active addiction. That my purpose is to help people come out of that.
Hmm.
And I know
I
probably,
love that.
you know what I'm saying, but like, it's taught me to be kind. It's taught me to be um it's taught me to be mindful, and it's taught me to listen. You know what I'm
Hmm.
saying? We don't listen when we're in our active addictions. So hell,
Absolutely.
listen before our active addictions, but really when you really sit down and think about it, at the end of the day, like, being an addict is it's not a good thing. It's never a good thing, but it teaches you life lessons that you wouldn't have learned otherwise. It gives you a perspective on life that we wish we never had, but now
Yeah.
that we have it, we can use that to fuel our future.
I love that. I love how you said that. It's addiction is something that we wish we never had, but we realize that we can use it to fuel our future and help others. Like
Mhm.
that's I'm writing that down. You better go copyright it or I'm taking it.
People ask me all the time, would you ever go back and change anything? And honestly, my answer is always going to be no.
No,
Because I wouldn't have found the wife I have today. I wouldn't have the beautiful kids I have today. I wouldn't have this amazing life now after almost 6 years of recovery I have. I mean, did I wish I went down that road? No. Would I change it? Also no. Because I
absolutely
have
not.
I have the life I have today.
And I say that too. Like I've had people ask, like, "Oh, so you probably want to become like go back to the person you were prior to addiction. That's who you're striving to be." I'm like, no, because that person led to my addiction. Like I
Yeah,
look at where I am now, and I'm not where I want to be, but I'm in a hell of a lot better place than I was even pre-addiction.
yeah,
Like because now I know how to cope with different things, and I don't need to go to people or items or activities to in order to cover over whatever I'm feeling. Like I've learned how to begin to deal with the pain that's in my life, and how to be able to sit with myself, which is what I never was able to do.
yeah.
Um,
Facts. People
look, what's that?
people ask me that question too, and honestly, no, I wouldn't go back and change it. But if I could, I'd bring back the people that I've lost.
Mm.
That would probably be the only thing I'd want to change, is
Wow,
that suffering, because
man, you did it again.
I'm not trying to.
Wow,
Truth,
because
because it's
that's a huge one. Like, and it's not just people like that we used with. Like, I think of my relationships with like my parents and my kids, and like I would not want to like I wouldn't change anything because I'm stronger because of my addiction. But if I could change one thing, it would be those relationships, and be able to rebuild those relationships and not have to go through the pain of not having those relationships. Like,
hard.
uh, it might we might get to some emotional stuff with this last couple minutes. Like, if you could describe yourself, like looking at who you are today, if you could describe yourself today in one word, what would it be and why?
I want Jeremy to answer that question.
No,
Uh,
he's doing his on the 19th.
Yeah,
So,
what? Because I always.
oh, you don't want him to answer it for himself. I'm gonna, since you said it. I mean, I'm the host. He's gonna give you a word describing you, and you're gonna give us a word describing you.
Okay, that's good. I'm down with that.
So, Jeremy, if you could, looking at Kaylee today, describe her in one word, what would it be and why?
Patient.
Mm.
The reason that I know she gave me that look, but this is the reason why behind it. No matter what she goes through, the struggles that she has, even with her MS, and sometimes she might get aggravated or upset, but she's patient. She's patient and she understands that sometimes we don't understand her, but she's patient until we come back and click back like this is what Kaylee means. It just took me a little while to figure that out, but I'm glad I do now. So now I can be another person for her, like, hey, if you need something here, I gotta understand. You just gotta give me a second and it'll click. But she has, whether she believes it or not, she has a lot of patience through the bullshit she's been through, and through the craziness she has to go through today. Especially with her diagnosis. It's to me, it's just patient.
You know what's crazy? I even have a word. Like I haven't been with the team that long, but I like caring, and I say that because see, you're gonna make me. Oh, gee, you're not gonna make. I'm gonna make myself cry. Like, uh, well, technically, because you're the one who did it, so you are making me cry in the long run. But I remember it was one live that we were doing, and I don't even know if I was on the team yet, but you had um you had said, you know what? It wasn't when I was on the team yet because it was to Holly, and you had said something. She had said something, then you said something, and you apologized for how like she didn't even look like she was upset from what you said, but then you kept apologizing for what you had said because you didn't want it to be taken the wrong way. And when I saw that, I was like, wow, like that's how much she cares that like this person didn't even like feel a certain type of way, but here she is like feeling like she has to apologize for making her feel that way, which just shows how how much care you put into relationships. Like, oof.
Damn.
Anyways, now your turn.
Fuck, I don't know about that. Shit. My husband said it was pretty good, but what would you say? Would you agree with that?
I would. You were very caring.
You know what? Before we hear what you have to say, Kaylee, I want to hear one word your husband would
Oh,
have to say.
I'm freaking shit.
Yeah. Put me on the spot like that. What's wrong with
First off, welcome to Preacher's Corner.
you? Hello, corner. What's going on?
How you doing tonight?
What's
All
up, Jeff?
So, Jeff, today where we stand, if you had to describe Kaylee in one word, what would it be and why?
one word, huh? Wow. Does it have to be one word?
I mean, as many words as you want.
Thank you. Oh, for question like, does this make me look fat? I ain't falling for that one.
Makes you look however you think you look.
Um, she's got a beautiful soul. I mean, she's kind, generous. She cares, and full of light.
Mm.
Shines. She really does. And from what she's doing with the group and helping all of these other people out, I don't know. I got nothing but love, and I'm really proud. I'm proud of all you guys. But she's just beautiful. She's a beautiful person inside and out.
That's awesome.
Hi.
Aw. All right, get back to work.
Now, Miss Kaylee, it's your turn.
um, I guess compassionate would be how I see myself. because I have that ability to, when somebody's struggling, to kind of see it from their perspective because I've been there. And I I really try to look at all situations, like all sides of the situation before I give my opinion or I give my advice or whatever. So, and I genuinely care about people. You know, people can be real shitty to me, and I just, it doesn't bother me because I know that it's not that truly how they feel. Um, so I feel like I have that ability to be compassionate and empathetic when others can't. Not, I don't want to say others can't, but you know, like sometimes people are real assholes. People are real,
Yeah, I
you know.
feel you.
And I try not to be that way because I wouldn't want somebody to be like that to me when I was struggling or when I'm having a problem. I would want somebody to show me that same compassion that I try and show others.
Can I say one thing? As
Sure.
as a peer advocate to someone who's in the process of becoming a peer advocate, you're going to make an amazing peer advocate.
Thank you.
I you're going to absolutely. Before I cry again.
Right.
Yeah. uh so looking now, because again, I like, we do what we do for those people that are in active addiction. We do what we do for people that are in recovery. Like, we even do what we do for those loved ones and the ones that we've hurt along the way. And then we do this for people who unfortunately aren't here with us anymore. And so, like, what? But looking at those people that are, because there are people that are suffering in silence,
Mm.
and that believe that they don't have a voice. And really, that's, like, I mean, that's what Recover Out Loud is all about, like giving a voice to people that don't have a voice. And that's why I think a majority of us that do this recovery work, whether it's we have social media or you work at a recovery center, like, regardless of who it is, I believe we all do it for those people that don't have a voice, and we become that voice for them. Um, what do you want others to know about, like, because we have a stigma on us, and that's that, I think that's a huge reason why a lot of people don't speak up and say that they are in addiction, or speak up and say anything about their addiction, because there is a stigma. Like the last guest I had, we talked about this stigma just in different places in the community. And so, what would you say to others, um, like, what do you want others to know about people who struggle with addiction? Like,
If you're an addict doesn't mean you're a bad person. It just
mm,
means dealing with something that you emotionally and physically couldn't deal with, so you had to find a way to numb the pain.
mm,
And eventually will come out of it. You know, we're always going to be here for those people who are still suffering in silence. But, know that there are people who have been where you're at, and, you know, nobody, especially in Recover Out Loud, nobody's going to judge you. We
yeah,
don't carry that stigma. We try to put an end to that because that's not who we are. Yes, we were addicts at one point in time, but that doesn't define us.
not at all.
That we did in our addiction, it doesn't define us. It's what we do when we become into our recovery that really makes us who we are.
Absolutely, I love that. Um, and so, like I said, there's people that are unfortunately suffering in silence, and not really saying anything. And there's people, unfortunately, like, I know people, I'm sure you both know people that are still in active addiction, people that we love. Like, and regardless of how bad our addiction was, we still connected with people.
Yeah.
And they're, I know, I met some of the most amazing people while I was in my addiction, and people that, like, I connected with, and people that I look at and I have love for. Like, we went through some of the worst moments in our lives together. Like, that builds a bond that is unlike anything else. And so if someone is listening right now who is in that pit, in active addiction, and like we've all been there, we feel there's no way out. Um, what what is something you would say to someone who may be listening right now, uh, whenever that is, wherever that is, who's in that pit right now? What would you say to them?
Reach out to reach out. Everybody says reach out, reach out, reach out, but it's truth, and it does get better, but you have to want it, and you have to work it. You have to be willing to be teachable, and at the end of the day, there's always going to be somebody that's available to listen without judgment.
Absolutely, absolutely, without judgment, which is key. Um,
We listen, but we don't judge around here.
absolutely. Last two questions. Here it is. I'll say last three questions. What does freedom look like you for you today?
But you cut. Oh,
What does freedom look like for you today?
freedom looks like for me today being able to go to my daughter's lacrosse games, and being able to do things like this podcast, and being able to do lives, and just feeling like I have a life again. You know what I'm saying? Like I have my family back, I have my kids back. Like it's an amazing feeling. And knowing what I want to do with the rest of my life, and help people, that is pretty awesome.
That was a good answer. That was a good
Thanks.
answer. um, the second to last question. What's next for you in this journey? And how can people connect with your mission?
I continue to speak on my story. I'm going to continue to advocate for people who cannot advocate for themselves.
Mm,
Um, I want to do peer advocate, but I have to wait till I'm off papers. But I'm this close. I'm this close. I'm paying my fine off tomorrow, and I should be able to be off probation, which will open the door for me to be able to actually like do the peer recovery work.
that's awesome. That's awesome. Now, for anybody listening, like you, so you talk to the person who was in the pit. Last question for anybody listening, regardless of who it is. What what do you want to leave? What piece of wisdom do you want to leave with anybody that comes across this video?
Um, not give up. We have been where you're at, and rock bottom always has trapdoors. When you think you've hit it, you can go lower, and but it does get better. There are people who are willing to help. There are people who are available. There are people who listen and don't judge. Even though I hate that phrase, but anyway, there are people that will do all that, and there are people willing to help, and there is freedom in recovery.
That's awesome. Thank you. That this was amazing. So I want to thank you, Kaylee, for taking the time out of your night to come on here, share your story, um, be transparent, be vulnerable. I believe there's power in vulnerability. Um, there's power in transparency. Like we can't really change without it. And so I appreciate and value that transparency and vulnerability. And so, thank you for coming on Preacher's Corner. Um, and you are now part of the Preacher's Corner family. So welcome to the family. Jeremy, thank you once again for coming on. Man, we're gonna see you three times by the time two times before you tell your story, then the third time when you tell your story, unless like something falls in between. But dang.
Can't get enough of my face. I get it, brother. But I do want to say something before you
Yes.
close. Kaylee, man, I met you in Rockstars. That's where this journey began for me and you.
Yes.
From there to where we are now, the growth I've seen in you, to that quiet little shy woman that I met, to the one that don't shut up now, but I love that you don't shut up because you're outspoken. You get your point across. You make people listen. You make sure you're heard, and that's amazing. From seeing where you was at till now. Same thing with me. I was in the corner, but now you can't get me to shut up. But like watching you grow and then watching me grow right along with you, it's fucking amazing. Let's just be honest. And I'm thankful, for 2 years ago because without starting your group, I wouldn't be here today where I'm at. So I just want to say you thank you.
Thank you for saying that, Jeremy. But I'm proud of you also. You have come a very, very, very long way, and you're gonna make it. You're gonna be okay. Things are a little rough right now, and I know that, but you're gonna pull through it, and we've got us all here to be there to help pull you through it. So
Man, you guys are gonna make me cry again.
She can be nice. Oh my god. I'm just playing. We stop.
So, well,
I did
before what?
I'm jealous.
What? Where's
Hold it
my
apart.
fireworks?
Maybe hold it apart a little bit, preacher.
Oh my!
We should have never showed you this, brother.
Oh no, Jamie's gonna be so mad.
I'm gonna make sure she knows. Jamie, you missed up an opportunity when you were on yours.
That's how he's gonna start his live tomorrow night. I bet you with fireworks and hearts.
Yep, that's okay.
But anyways, before this podcast hits hits some crazy times, some turbulence. We are that is all we have for tonight. We are done with fireworks and hearts and fireworks, and I like that better. Hearts and fireworks. Um, Again, I appreciate both of you. Thank you both for coming on. Jeremy, thank you for filling in. Like I just being transparent. Like I back in January of last year, I OD'd, and the three people living in my car with me are the ones that saved my life. And I told each and every one of them, like, it is my personal goal to get you guys out, and that is one reason why I got out of addiction, so that because I knew I wouldn't be able to help them if I was in the same position. And my co-host was one of them, and now, unfortunately, again, moment of transparency, like he was in drug court. Um he skipped out on the last couple ones, and unfortunately he's facing some time. And so like each episode is basically like a dedication to him, because Preacher's Corner wouldn't be what Preacher's Corner is today if it wasn't for the contributions that he made. And so, like, it was hard for me to make the decision to bring other people on to be a co-host. And so, like, I'm very choosy about the people that I bring on. Like, see, I said we needed to end this so I didn't cry, and here I am crying. Like,
I won't do
so
it.
I thank you, Jeremy, for being willing to step up here with me, and just be like, I could do it by myself, but I like having someone up here with me, besides the guest. And so I thank you and I appreciate you like more than you can ever know. So thank you.
Brother, it's called family, man. We step up when our family's in need, and that's what it is. It's not just because I feel sorry for you or feel bad for you. Actually, I'm excited. Now twice that you asked me, and then you asked me to come back. On Saturday, my 6 year mark, to come back and share my story. Like, this is actually taking me out of my funk that I'm going through right now, and it's actually making me push that shit to the side and focusing on better things like Kaylee's story. Like, I needed to hear that tonight. I needed to hear this. I needed this interaction. So actually, thank you, brother. Like, you saved me once again, whether you believe it or not. But you saved me from my own shit tonight, and I want to appreciate you for that, man.
Well, thank you, thank you. I love you guys. Um, So that is all we have for tonight. We are going to end it so that nobody else cries, nobody throws up hearts, nobody causes fireworks to go off. We're ending it. So, like always, if you have not subscribed, if you're watching this and you have not subscribed, even after this episode, if
What are
you
you
have
doing?
not subscribed, what the heck are you doing? We freaking gave you hearts and fireworks. Subscribe and then press the thumbs up so you can get fireworks. You never know. You might click that thumbs up to like it, and fireworks might go off in your house. That might not be a good idea because
That's
then
not gonna
the
be.
fire department might need to come. So I hope that doesn't happen if you click the like. So, like, hopefully that doesn't deter you from clicking the like. But definitely click the bell so that you can know when more craziness pops up done by
Ding.
moi, me, preacher. And so, but I do appreciate everybody who's watching, who comes across this. Um, I could not do any of this without people to watch it. And so I appreciate each and every viewer. I appreciate each and every person that's subscribed and anybody who will in the future subscribe. And then if you need any help, let me know in the description below is my email. And if you want to talk to either one of them, I can always connect you with one of them.
Absolutely.
And if you're on Facebook, make sure to check out Recover Out Loud. Uh, two, recover out loud. One Roman numeral
2.
line. Don't
You
put in
messed
the
that
number
all
two.
up.
I don't know if it'll work.
It won't.
But come check us out on Facebook. Um, and then if you want some merch, I got merch in the description below as well. But
What?
yeah, yeah. So you're gonna have to check that out. But that is all that we have for today. Uh, until we see you again, always remember to love yourselves and love each other, but most of all, love God.
Peace.
Deuces.